Why don't I call the meeting to order? And although we don't have a quorum, we have certainly enough of the members here to be able to discuss the budgets and listen to Chief Averos and Darlene on their discussions of their budgets. So why don't I call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. on 3/14/2022. Members of the committee that are in attendance: Michael Bennett, Todd Dargy, and myself, Tom Connolly. The members in attendance, others in attendance rather: Sandy Nolan, Linda Cole, Chief Averos, Sue Lawless, Caesar is here, and Chief Chavez, and Jean Gallant, and Ms. Mary as well. Maybe first, why don't we wait on any votes to see if John can join, and then we'll have John and Cheryl, so we'll have sufficient for acceptance of the minutes. And ask Chief Averos, we'll use your time as wisely as possible, and ask you to just walk us through your budget.
Sure. So line number 51 is the chief's salary. That was negotiated salary per the contract. Line number 52 is the administrative assistant salary, and I put a note at the bottom that says $4,761 of that is coming out of the Opeb funds. That's why there's an increase this year.
Right.
That was approved.
So I corrected that on the budget sheet. I put in just the amount you needed out of the budget and put the note to the side that an extra was coming out of ARPA.
Okay.
Yeah, just so they didn't get confused.
So you put in the 43,366?
Right.
Okay. Any questions on that?
No, we've got that here. Thanks, we got it.
All right, line number 53 is the wages, and what we did here was we just included the contractual changes for the union collective bargaining agreement, and that includes the changes in education, stipends, certificates, and steps. It's roughly a $30,000 increase there.
Right. Yeah, see that. But there's really nothing in there, Chief, other than normal course of business, that 30,000 increase, right?
No, it's literally just just things that we have to pay contractually, which is
exactly.
When we have a few members who have obtained college degrees this year, yeah. So they get an increase for that. We have seen an increase in members who are getting more certifications because they get stipends for certifications. So we've seen that as well. And then the rest is just step increases.
Okay, thanks.
Line 54, we put a small adjustment in that, and that's just to make up the, as the full-time wages go up, just due to contractual obligations, we'd also, that translates into the training budget as well. Pretty much everything else, as requested, we just submitted a level funded budget with the exception, of EMS, I believe.
Supplies, yeah.
Yeah, ambulance supplies is the one, so I'll just make a comment on the budget. It's getting more and more difficult every year. This will be the second year, our budgets were tight to begin with. And this will be the second year where almost our entire budget is level funded. And as we all know, the cost of living has gone up so much. So that's why I put a note at the bottom of every one that says a level funded budget may mean a cut in service. And I don't know, a dollar only goes so far. This will be this, like I said, the second year in a row where we're level funding everything. So I'm not sure what that's going to, we'll have to cut, but I'm sure we will. Even things like vehicle maintenance, the price of tires and oil and all of those things have just gone up so dramatically. So
yeah.
But as you requested, this is a level funded budget with the exception of ambulance supplies. We did request an increase in that to 29,500, and that's one area where we know the prices have just gone up, astronomically. In some places, 100% increase we've seen in supplies when they're available.
Right.
Yeah.
Any questions from the committee? Chief, I just want to add, I know that, and I think I speak for the committee, I know that this continuous level funding kind of process that we've been going through the last couple of years is not sustainable. Welcome, Cheryl. Cheryl, thanks for joining. We know it's not sustainable. We cannot pay our people competitively and continue this way. And so we have, as a town, we've got to make some hard decisions. I think this year we may get away with this, but we're going to have to make some hard decisions about what we spend as a community, whether services are going to go way down or whether we find new sources of revenue, because this is clearly not sustainable. And if we want to pay competitively for the dedicated people we have working here, we have to recognize that we underpay them at our peril, that they can go to other towns in the surrounding communities and work just as hard with just as much dedication for more money. We've got to be careful with that. So,
and we continue to see that. Just 2 weeks ago, I believe we lost another one to a neighboring community, and the difference in pay is staggering. So, it's something that we've been dealing with for a long time, with constantly training, recruiting new staff, and then as soon as we get them to a level where they've been around for 2 years or so, they end up leaving and going somewhere else. So,
sure.
And like you said, our level funding things is only making matters worse on that front. So
it is, absolutely.
Emergency management budget, I also submitted that. That's level funded as well, at 4550. I don't know if there's any questions on that. No.
No, I appreciate your working hard to bring this in level. We know how hard that is, and we also know its implications. So appreciate it. Thanks.
And then, did you want me to just talk briefly on the ambulance purchase?
Yeah, that would be great.
So we requested $340,000 for the purchase of a new ambulance. So our 2017 has about 80,000 miles now, but the important thing to remember is that I was actually going to push this off until next year, but when we got the quote from the dealer, their time frame now is looking at between 18 months to 2 years for delivery time of an ambulance. So it's important that we get it ordered this year. And like speaking with Sandy, we have to get the article approved at town meeting before we can commit to the purchase. So, the money technically we won't pay for it for 2 years, but we need to get that approved so we can get it ordered.
It's important for us to know.
Backlog.
You have a 2017, so we could expect that this one will have 110,000 miles on it when you take delivery?
Yeah, at least.
Okay.
At least, yeah.
All right. That's good. When we get questions at annual town meeting, it'll be important for us to be able to answer that. So
sure.
That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Sandy, anything about that being in the capital plan that we should be aware of?
No, we definitely have it in there. They did talk about putting it off until next year. I don't think that that's a good idea if it's a 2-year lead time.
Yeah.
And like I said, we really can't order it if we don't have the money committed to it.
We can't order it. Sure.
You just can't do that.
Yeah.
We don't know next year what our free cash figure will be. We don't even know that we'd be able to do it next year. So
right.
It really has to be done this year, I believe.
Right. And the prices of these things, given what's going on in Europe, who knows what an ambulance is going to cost next year.
Right. Good point.
So, okay.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you all. Any final questions for Chief? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. There's Darlene. She's off camera, but we lost. Darlene, could we ask you to kind of walk us through your budget?
Yes. Hi. Good evening. So this is my first time doing this, so come along with me.
It's
So,
okay. For most of us, it's our first or second time. So don't worry about that.
okay. So, in terms of line item 116, the Council on Aging, of course, my salary's there, for the projected year. You know, I did speak to Cheryl with reference to getting my LSW, this year, because we're finding that the outreach in the area of COA is going to be utilizing a lot more of the social service sector in terms of higher education. So I'm willing to go for that LSW designation to help the situation with outreach. We're utilizing as many services as possible outside the organization, that is Old Colony Elder Services, as well as independent living centers or independent associates, to utilize a lot of their case management and social workers as well. So I'm trying to make sure that in wage-wise, that, I mean, technically, a lot of the seniors are looking for more, you know, of course, the programs. Additional programs means that hiring another person to do programs. However, what I did find that there is Title V money out there, I had mentioned before, that I can utilize, and that will be at 19.5 hours. So that will be a help to the budget for next year as well. Expenses, you know, I think the most expensive part of running the COA are the vans themselves. And potentially maybe we could look at the GATRA option and see if that's most viable. I could see that the usage of, you know, what we're bringing in revenue for the usage, you know, for the use of the transportation doesn't compensate for the insurance and all the maintenance. You do utilize the, you know, our maintenance or our vehicle department, which is awesome. He's been very, very good, Tom, in helping us out with a lot of different things that have come up. But if there was something larger than that, I could see that this would hurt the COA in a lot of ways in terms of our budget. So we really probably have to have that like a real major look at some point. And I think Charlie and I were initially looking at that option. And so I think going forward, that would be a real major plus if we could do something for the GATRA services.
How would that work? We'd basically be outsourcing our transportation to them?
Correct. So it's like the other town, Norwell has just completed their process to do so. And so I think it was Plimpton as well. I think it was Plimpton. But yeah, so where we would bring in like $55,000 to have the train actually come into the town, that we would actually get that back. Or so that's money that we could actually end up, I think that's what the money, then we'd end up having that money back in our pocket. But for the actual salaries, we'd still be paying the salaries on the drivers themselves. But for the actual van, they'd take over the vehicles and maintenance of them.
So we basically lease the vans from GATRA?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay,
that was an option that we were looking at, and I'd like to still continue that, you know, possibility of looking at that. I think that's going to be a major, especially where we're a community that still provides the services, and we are very dedicated to that for our senior population.
Is that you say that as though it's an exception? Haven't many other communities cut it out?
Yes, there's a lot of the communities that jumped on board with regard to GATRA. There's some pluses and minuses, of course. They would actually, this consumer or the resident would end up having to call an 800 line to actually make the arrangements for their transportation.
Sure.
Yeah. And so
would that eliminate our dispatch line item from your budget?
Actually, that's going to be a positive, because I'll tell you why. We can actually then delegate a lot of the reception's responsibilities to not just transportation. And with that, it does take up our time, and it's taking up just the way our systems were at the My Senior Center in terms of the way it works. And I'm trying to balance that budget here so that we utilize the My Senior Center database here correctly, so that if we ever had to do an audit, the town's numbers or Sandra's numbers or Linda's numbers would actually match our numbers, so that, you know, it shows that what we're bringing in and then what we collect for that day is going to actually show on the records in our system, and it should match with the town's or the treasurer's office as well. So I'm hoping to get to that point. I wasn't doing that before. So, you know, I think the long term of, you know, just the reception, we can give her, assign her other responsibilities. And she's been very flexible, and she's a quick learner. So, and, you know, we need to have that programs person in place. So, and again, if I can get that 19.5 hours, if I can, we're going to be advertising that position, but they get funded through, and I've mentioned this to Sandy before, it's a Title V program through Coastline Elder Services. So I signed a contract with them to provide that. And hopefully maybe we can get somebody to do, or actually for that 19.5 hours, in addition to hopefully then take this transportation off the receptionist's responsibilities. So.
Sandy, if we, I know this would be for next year, but if we swapped, it sounds like, you know, moving to a GATRA relationship, we would swap a capital planning item for an operating expense. Is there anything that we'd have to do to anticipate that next year?
That is a bit of a question. I've been trying to understand the GATRA, like, so what do we do with the vans that we have now? And if, are they still our drivers, and are those drivers just doing Halifax, or are they drivers that belong to GATRA and then they do the Halifax residents with everyone else? There's a lot of questions, and that's why I was glad Charlie was looking into it, because I figured he'd get all those answers for me. But there's a lot of questions to be had with the GATRA. Years ago when it was brought up, I was concerned because they were going to take over all our vans. And then I wasn't sure, well, we purchased the vans. How do we just, you know, then give it to them? I'd like to know a little bit more about it. There's still a lot that we need to look into with that. So,
and actually they actually held a couple of meetings with regard to, you know, with regard to the individuals that would be able to answer these types of questions, and perhaps maybe you should be a part of that. But as for other, Kingston did it, and from Kingston's so the change over was kind of cumbersome for the individuals, for the residents, but once they got used to contacting that 800 line, they didn't have that one-on-one, hi Mary, how you doing, or hi the receptionist, but they had to now go through an agency, and that was kind of a little bit of a downside, I guess, if you're on the social service sector. But for, you know, for the maintenance of the vans themselves, they would actually assume that responsibility on the maintenance of that. We would actually continue to pay the van drivers, from what I understand.
So we lease the capital equipment, and we remain the employer record for the drivers.
That's the way I understood it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe when those meeting opportunities come up, if yeah, I'd be happy to pitch in and attend, or go with Sandy or you, Darlene, and understand more about it, because it might be a way to shift it, and really understand though what the implications would be of moving that onto your operating budget and off the capital plan.
And I think it makes a lot of sense, but I also feel like once you step in, Tom and Sandy, you'd make some be able to have those questions answered. But there's a reason for why a lot of towns are doing it. Not to say that every town should do it or we should do it, but it has a lot of sense in terms of future.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Something that we'll look at.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee?
I just wanted to point out that her expense budget went up by $650, and her electricity budget went up by $300, but her electricity does need to go up by that $300. So I wouldn't cut that. The expense budget, I think she was saying, was because of the van maintenance? I'm not sure. Is that what you said, Darlene?
Yeah, so the expense budget itself, hold on one sec. So the expense, yeah, so pretty much no, actually, anything having to do with the van, it does come out of the revolving account, the transportation revolving account, so as an expense. So anything having to do with our newsletter, having to do with any, you know, supplies that we have to have for the office, you know, when we put these newsletters out, they cost us money. I mean, not everybody's, you know, email able, I mean, a lot of people do have the email, but we don't have everyone on email, but they love the newsletter. And perhaps
So is
maybe
that
I
where the
can,
650, is that where the 650 will be spent on things like postage and paper?
yeah,
and that kind of
postage
thing?
and, right, we did have to buy a monitor for the receptionist, so that was an expense that was larger than we thought. So pretty much I'd say a lot of it's the postage, and we don't use a lot of, right now anyway, we don't use a lot of, you know, supplies, you know, except for paper maybe, but other than that, I'd say we go through, and the toner, we try to be very careful of too. So I'm going to see if I can write a grant in terms of, see what we can do in terms of having someone sponsor us as a newsletter, to sponsor our newsletter at some point. I know the EOEA did it for Bridgewater. I'm hoping that we can find some kind of wonderful person that would sponsor our newsletter. We always have some wonderful people out there. We had a company come forward. I was so happy to get this, but a company just donated 100 bags for the St. Patrick's Day event. And they're beautiful bags full of all sorts of nice things in it. So maybe there's somebody out there that would group together and, you know, maybe help us out with the newsletter. It's something to look at, and, you know, that I planned on looking at once time allowed me to do. So we are getting some money from the MCOA, $500. I got a grant. I wrote it a couple weeks ago. So, and then was a potential for $1,000 to do our project, go forward in terms of a intergenerational, bringing community together. That is the businesses as well as the schools, and, you know, some of the, it's called the Mass Challenge Walk. And it's money for us that they're going to fund everything in terms of the awards and so on. But we are initially are receiving $500, and then we will receive, if we achieve everything in the end, we'll get another $1,000. So I wish I could just have a big fundraiser. I don't know if it can't do that, but I'm just saying it would makes life so much easier, and we probably would earn more money.
Right.
So,
yeah. Right. Thanks for pointing that out, Sandy. I missed the increase in that one line. So I mean, overall, we're coming in close to flat, up just a little under 1%, which is in these times right now tricky to do. So appreciate everything you got here. Any other questions from the committee? Okay. Darlene, thanks very much.
thank you. Thank you.
Let's see on the agenda next. I know we can't, wait, Linda, we have a quorum, right?
You do.
You have a quorum.
Yes, you do. So you
Excellent.
can vote the minutes and start to vote some articles if you want.
I think first I want to thank, so maybe we vote the minutes first. First, if I could ask for a vote to accept the minutes of 2/28. Cheryl's on mute, but I think, thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, a roll call vote. Michael?
Yes.
Okay, Todd?
Yes.
Cheryl?
It's still on mute.
Wait for her to come back in. Here she comes.
She can do like the thumbs up. That works.
Yeah,
too.
give me a thumbs up, Cheryl. We can hear you. Okay, great. So we have that. And Tom Connolly. So minutes of 228 carry. Linda, one small adjustment that I found that we could vote it subject to this change. In that you have me calling the meeting to order on
Oh, sorry.
March 7th, and that was
And you
so
weren't there.
graciously done. Yeah, so graciously done by Cheryl. Do we have I don't know if we have a quorum to vote these minutes because I can't vote.
Hey, John,
Right.
could you hear me?
Oh, is that John?
John.
Yeah,
John's
John, you're
there.
I'm
there.
sorry, I just
you're-
figured out how to unmute. I've been here for about 15, 20 minutes, so I'm
Oh,
here.
great. I didn't know who 508 was, but there, now it says Summer all of a sudden. So now we know that, now we know you're on. Thank you.
Yep.
So just for the sake of good order, voting in favor of the minutes for 2/7, John?
Yes,
Okay, good. So we have an all in favor on those minutes. Could I ask for a vote, subject to the change of just Cheryl having called the 3/7 minutes to that meeting to order? Can I get a motion to accept those?
So moved.
Thank you. And Cheryl gives us a thumbs up. That's a second. So roll call vote. This does include me. Michael,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Cheryl's a yes, and John?
yes.
Great. Okay, that those minutes carry. Thank you all. I was at school committee last week and it went long, but it was productive, I hope. I thought that I know that we voted a blanket sort of level funding approval of the budget last week, but and discussing this with Sandy and Linda earlier today and earlier at the end of last week, I wanted to propose that we go through our FinCom budget spreadsheet and just quickly confirm our position on each of the lines so that we know where the work is. So I was going to ask if Linda could share her screen. We could just walk through these, and I think it'll be relatively quick, but we'll be able to see and understand where we are on each of the budget, each of the departments at this point, and see where our workload lies for the next couple of weeks. I had actually hoped that we would have a school budget to review for this meeting, but that wasn't forthcoming yet. They're still working on it, so hopefully we'll have it for next. And I'll check in with the school committee and see where that stands. Is that okay with the committee? We'll walk through our budget and see where we are. Okay.
Yep.
Linda,
All right,
can you
so-
share?
I asked Caesar about that. He said he has to enable it, but I don't see that I'm getting the button to share
I
the
have a
screen.
The
I
green
have a
button at the
share
bottom.
screen
The green button at the
button.
bottom.
See right in the
Yeah,
center of your
you
screen?
should have access now.
Linda, do you want me to see if I can do it? I have that shared screen button.
Oh, nope, I've got it. Let me just
right.
find what I'm trying to get into. Thank you. Thank you, though.
Forcing
goodness
practice on
gracious.
all of us.
Sorry, give me a second. I'm not finding the part that I'm trying to get to that I have up on the screen. Cindy, you want to see if you do have it real quick? Because
Yeah, let me see. Share screen.
Here we go.
Can you see it?
Yeah. Yes.
Brilliant. We
I'm
got it.
amazed.
thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Excuse my
I
cough.
don't know if it's because I had it open in another tab, but I couldn't get it to share
Ah.
up.
Yeah, it was interesting. All the little screens that I had up came
Yeah.
open. All right, so I'm going up to the top
Good.
of the form. So I've marked with the red R's the items that are considered recommended because they were all level funded. I skipped all of the wage items, as you can see.
Mhm.
All right. So the first ones that You can see down the IT expense. So we separated out Caesar's wage. And that's why it's highlighted in pink, because this is a change. I updated, and what I went with on his last proposal that was in was the level serviced budget. And it was asking for 112,641, which is an $8,978 increase.
And all of that is license increases from what I could see. But maybe we should have Caesar come back. Perhaps we put it on next week, since that's a good size increase in the budget, but I think a lot of it is associated with contractual license increases, or increases in census. The user community is growing. So that's a large one. I think we should table that for now and put that on the agenda for next week if everyone's amenable to that.
Okay. The next one is line number 19, the assessor's expense. I believe Holly Mary is on the
Yes.
the Zoom, and she may want to speak to this. There was an increase in mapping charges. Holly, do you want to speak to it?
Hi, it's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, Holly.
Yep.
Okay, the assessor's budget is basically level funded except for the contractual line items, and one was mapping. Our mapping line item is mandatory by DOR to update mapping each year. Unfortunately, we had to find another mapping company. But we were fortunate to keep our CAD files from the original mapping company, but that's just a contractual increase. Our
Contractual
fee.
Sorry, Holly, contractual because we had to go to a new vendor and
We had to go to a new vendor, yes. Our vendor quit on us, basically. And took the files, but after beg, borrow, and steal, we got our files back.
Okay.
And had to find another company.
Okay, and that's the only increase here.
Nope, the fees, which were dues for our assessors, for Plymouth County Assessors Association and Massachusetts Association, they went up a little bit. And then our contractual maintenance on our camera web hosting has gone up. So 3 contracts, basically.
Okay. Thank you. We'll table that one for after we get through all of the budgets, but thanks for explaining. I mean, basically you've got, other than putting this thing out to bid, which would be silly, you've got no real room to maneuver there. Thank you, Holly.
All right, the next line to consider is line number 25, which is treasurer, banking, and payroll expenses. And this one, Linda can speak to.
So that actually is just going up about $100 after, I think it's the first time in 7 years that we've actually had our payroll company have to increase their costs to us and share them back through their companies that they're working with. So the major portion of it obviously is paper envelopes, paper products, the stuff for printing our checks and for stuffing our checks that we do. So we figured out how many we're doing per year roughly, what it would cost us per piece, and we need to increase by about $100.
So it just begs the question, so I have to ask, most private sector companies have effectively forced people to automatic deposit. So
Correct.
Are we not in a position to do that? Because it does save a fair amount of money.
Yes, we have not forced them to direct deposit. We have some people that just obviously aren't interested in it. It does on our end at times make it more complicated if there's situations where we need to correct checks or get money back, and because we're going out over such a vast majority of people, some who directly work for the town and some who are indirectly working for the town, we've never forced the issue of going completely to direct deposit. And there are other things that we would pay for anyways on paper, regardless of the paychecks themselves. There's certain reports that we have to get and have to send out to state divisions that will only take it in paper form.
Sure,
Still,
EEO ones and that are still paper form, yeah.
and the ACA forms, things like
Yeah.
that, we have to mail them out and put them on print. We don't have a choice.
Okay. Thank you. Just
You're
trying
welcome.
to play devil's advocate on some of this
I
stuff.
understand.
So the 819, sorry, just Sandy, just so we confirm, line 22, which we skipped over, that's entirely a salary expense line?
That's right.
Okay, thanks. Then the next big one is
Oh, yep.
town clerk, and that is, I presume, elections. But Sue's on, so maybe she can speak to
Yep.
it.
Actually, the increase. Oh, sorry. I just lost it.
Line 28, Sandy?
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
No, sorry, not
hit
line
the wrong
28.
button.
It's actually, I think you've got the wrong one marked. Isn't the $10,000 increase, is that in the town clerk clerical, or is that?
That's in the town clerk clerical.
Yep.
Yep. So that's not recommended
That's wage.
at this time. That's
Yeah.
wages. Yep.
Okay,
So the increase though is line 30
there's the
Yeah.
election.
is the election. Sue?
Okay.
Yep, so that increase is strictly because we did not have a state election. So we have a primary and a state election this year that we did not have last year.
Yeah, the real comparator here, which is really close, is 21. So where you spent
And
just about
to be
this amount.
honest, it might even be more than that, because if we have to, you know how we're getting the new voting machine,
Mhm.
we'll also have to pay maintenance costs and things like that that I really hadn't considered at the time when I submitted this. So
Mhm.
I think that they haven't given me a figure on that part of it yet. So you have to have it coded, and you know, there's a lot of fees
Security
associated.
and all that, sure.
Yep.
Okay, but mainly that is, yeah, we're in an election year, even though it's off cycle versus last year. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Keep going, Sandy.
Okay. Let's see. That's clerical. We get down to the police, I believe is where we are now.
Right, so
And the only line there, actually, all of those lines that went up were wage lines.
wages, yeah. Okay.
And then the fire, we spoke about that earlier. The only
Sandy-
line that went up was
Sandy, can you go
yeah.
back up? Planning board's got $17,000 in it?
Did
all
we
right.
miss that?
So let me explain that.
Since
That is planning board
Nice catch,
wages.
Cheryl.
So
wages.
yes, so what happened was the planning board chose to separate their secretary out of the regulatory board, the regulatory secretaries.
So that's going down.
So they're separated out, and that's how much it would cost for just their secretary. The regulatory board clerical, last year, we had one person who did 2 of the jobs. In FY23, we will not. We will have a building inspector administrative assistant, a zoning board clerical, and a conservation clerical. So that's why you see not that much of a, yes, it went down. I don't know why that, oh.
What's the
So
math on that?
$409, yeah, so it's me and my formulas. If you look at that formula, I took and added together the planning board wages line and the regulatory board clerical to show you the overall increase. That's me, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
That's not a line total. That's a combined
Yeah.
total for 35 and
That's a combined
36.
total. Right. So that's,
Okay.
but that's the answer to that. Cheryl, that's why that's 17,000, because planning board chose to separate out their secretary.
Okay.
All
But they
right.
still, I would ask then, I mean, so we're looking at a 6.5% increase in wages for clerical for the combined group?
A number of those positions are still on steps. And you're going to see some of the increases also just because the
Because of step.
Conservation Commission and building inspector positions are separate positions now, where the other position could save, you know, when they would work as the same person, it saved a little
Right.
time.
The map doesn't work on town buildings, the negative 3034, what's the,
Right.
What's
So
that
that
formula?
again is we separated out the director of building maintenance
Yeah.
at your request. So I
Got it.
added those two together, and it did go down. I'm not sure. I
We're
want
net
to
down.
double check that number
Okay.
and see
But
exactly
it's the
where.
same dynamic going there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Okay. So we went.
Yes.
Sorry about this. I'm not used to doing this without a mouse. I'm on my laptop. So the 3,500 on line 73 for the medical supplies.
Chief talked to about it. Yeah.
Right. Okay, then the building inspector, we have the wages. The building inspector chose, and I'm not sure whether this has to be approved by the selectmen or not, but he was choosing to not have an assistant building inspector and adding the amount of that into his expenses. So you see how it's a
I
wash.
see.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Again, because the building inspector is actually under the selectmen, I'm not sure if that was something that was discussed ahead of time, but
Mhm.
that's what that is.
Mhm.
The animal control expense went down a little bit.
Okay.
The dispatch services, this is our 911 services
Mhm.
in Duxbury. This is all contractual. The contract went up to 200,000
Wow.
this year. So there's not much we can do about that.
Which will all go to wages and make us even less competitive.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did punch in new numbers from the elementary school. Christine called me with new numbers, but as you said, we haven't gotten the budget yet. So some of these numbers are new.
But we're still 679, which is where the January 4th budget was right around that total.
Right. Was it? Okay.
So just so the committee's aware, half of that is a unilateral increase that we're trying to absorb in special education transportation because we lost our vendor, and the vendor who's there is charging just radically higher prices. So that consumes half of the increase. The other half, there were small increases in the budget associated with things like textbooks, tech, and health services, small ones, and those are all offset. However, you'll see special needs transportation up $316,000. That's what I was referring to. And then the Silver Lake assessment is up $267,000.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Which is, so it's all, and very little, other than that transportation budget, very little of it is a function of Halifax Elementary. So we're awaiting the finals. We've asked them to tell us what this would imply, but that 316 is the thing that Halifax Elementary is having a really hard time swallowing.
Do I assume that we take bids for this, for special needs?
I asked for that, and I keep getting the question. I keep getting that there are no other vendors that they could contractually assign for next year, and so I've asked them to really press on that. There's got to be some other option for us to be able to do this, other than have a vendor who's actually taken a couple of routes from $200 a run to $600 a run. So, I mean, I just think we're being price gouged there, and I've tried to, I think we've made that point to the committee and to the school. It is the one place where I think there should, we ought to be able to bring that number down somehow.
I'm thinking that too.
Yeah. Because it's just not a productive use of school funds, but it is
Certainly isn't.
It's where we're stuck, though. We have no choice unless they can find another vendor. And that's what we've pressed them to do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Highway has come in level funded except for the traffic lights line. I'm not sure why that. And then tree maintenance.
Yeah.
So I don't know when Steve is on the agenda, but that would be,
I don't believe he's responded to be on the agenda at all, but let me take one peek.
Press him for it.
Nope, my mistake. He's on for the 21st. He's the only one we have on for next week,
Okay.
which is
Great.
good.
Great.
the cemetery, just the wage line. Okay, the water department, their supply line is going up by 3,600. I don't remember Bill saying why. Then gas and oil, they went up by 2,000, which I think that's self-explanatory.
That's wishful thinking, but we'll get to all of that later, right?
Right. Recycling. Let's see. They level funded their office expense. Their recycling center expense actually went down. Hazardous waste collection went up. And the trash collection and disposal went up. Again, I believe that the trash collection and disposal is contractual. I don't believe there's much you can do with that, but Steve can also speak to these on the 21st because he is the department head over these. We'll give him the heads up so he can have.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I will.
So,
Please do. Yeah.
Yeah. Then we get to health and human services. Again, the Board of Health level funded everything. Council on Aging, we just talked to Darlene. So it was 650 on their expense and 300 on the electricity, but the 300 on the electricity is definitely required.
Right.
You can see last year, it didn't look like they used that much in FY21. I mean, it was 2,800. The year before it was higher. And I think the 3,000, I think we're going to be tight, really tight on the 3,000 if she makes it this year on that. So I would suggest keeping that.
Okay.
All right. Now, library, Jean Gallant, I know she's on the call. I did just update her budget. She has a formula she has to follow through the state. They take 3 years average, and then they increase it they take the average and they increase that average by 2.5%. They don't give you any wiggle room. They, I think they feel that libraries are like low-hanging fruit. It's the first thing people are going to cut. So as a protection, the state has sort of said, you have to follow this formula. You can get a waiver. So if you were cutting everyone's budget, you could get a waiver and cut theirs as well. But it's a lot of work to get the waiver. And if you don't follow the formula and you don't have a good reason for the waiver, you get uncertified. If you're not a certified library, you cannot do any of the library share. So you can't get books from other libraries. Your card isn't good in any other libraries. It's very sort of strict program.
But it's also very tough to get recertified.
I have heard
Once
that.
you've lost it. Yeah.
Yeah. Bridgewater went through this some years ago, and they were told once you get uncertified, the requirements have changed. So now to get certified, you've got to come up a whole nother level, and it would come at great expense.
Right.
Sure.
So,
So
it's Jean. And so what actually happens if I apply for a waiver, this year, and then the following year, whatever my bottom line is that we've approved and stuff, next year it's 2.5% more than what I was supposed to get this year. So not only so it's more than that. It's more than 2.5% because, if you give me, $5 and I was supposed to get 10, the following year, I'm 2.5% of 10, not 5. So that's kind of how that works.
So it compounds on you, Jean, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And this applies across all of your line items, the 2.5%?
Nope, it's just my bottom line.
So yeah, so we're saying the same thing, sorry.
Yes. The thing, so we went through a while back where we lost here at the library, like, you know, two or three staff members that were at a grade 6 and then rehired at a grade 1. So my bottom line went like way down out of nothing that we did to cause that. And the Mass Board still said, no, you need that 2.5%. So what the town did to avoid, you know, a waiver was kind of give me an extra funds, like they put that money into my budget so that I would meet my certification number. And then I just kind of turned that back, but they are very strict about something like that.
Right. She's also used it for capital items that she needed in the library, rather than coming for an article. When she had extra money in her expense account, she would use that, so that she was not asking for extra money, when in most cases, if she had level funded, she would have needed, or had not gotten the extra, she would have needed to come for articles. So
got it.
She works very well with us, let's put it that way. And again, if the wage line goes up.
And I appreciate that the town keeps us certified, because like I said, to get recertified takes a number of years.
Sure.
And there are some libraries that have, you know, stayed on a waiver for a number of years. And actually now the Mass Board is cutting down on that too. I think it's after 5 years, you have to be certified. Might be 1 year. I didn't look into that because I don't like to think about it.
Don't even think about it, right?
Yeah.
But I will tell you that when the wage line goes up, so if there was, say, a wage increase voted, if the wage line went up, she would then lower her expense budget. So her bottom line stayed the same. It was always, so we're not inflating it by any kind of wage increase, so.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Jean.
You're
Scroll down.
welcome.
Halifax Fireworks Committee, it looks like an increase, but it's really not. We just haven't funded them the last 2
It's
years.
0 to something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because we hadn't funded for the last 2 years, we are funding them this year. And that basically pays mostly for their extra detail and that type of thing.
Right.
They are mostly funded by fundraisers. And
So this
that's
is, so what is this for? That's for their security? What detail is that?
extra detail,
Okay.
police detail.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So that covers their police and fire
Right.
details. Okay.
Yeah. The debt, we've seen decreases in the debt. And that's because we like to keep the principal level. So the interest goes down every year. Plymouth County retirement has gone up $117,076.
Wow.
All right, the group insurance, I have not lowered that yet. We had anticipated a 7% increase. We're now working on, what was it, Linda, a 3% increase?
3 is correct.
So Linda is going to redo it. We've also had 2 new family plans come on. So she
We're
has,
looking at
it
a
will-
30, roughly 35,000.
yeah, I think it was about a 30,000, but
Okay.
It will
Okay.
fluctuate a lot between now, because we're about to hit our open enrollment period, so it will fluctuate greatly in the next month and a half when we see
Right.
people coming on and hopefully shopping to cheaper plans, but we'll
Yeah.
see.
Danny, can we go back to the retirement number for a second? Is that
Sure.
an actuarial calculation? Is that poor? I know that's not poor investment performance because these guys are doing great.
Yeah,
Is it
No,
just
it's-
actuarial?
they are looking to be fully funded.
correct.
What year, Linda?
The original date was, I think they're at 2030 right now. It's either 2029 or 2030. They'll be fully funded. So we're coming into the last stretch where each individual entity within the Plymouth County Retirement is having to see their
It's just an assessment. We just have to ante up.
their assessments going up,
Yeah.
basically, as we come into those last few years where
Can't
they're
do anything
trying to
about
fully
it.
fund.
Right,
Okay.
and this is one of the things where Linda had suggested that if we have free cash left at the end of the town meeting, that we put it into the Plymouth County Retirement,
Yeah.
because it will lower our assessment
Mhm.
in the
Next year.
future years.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
And
And
Tom,
that-
you're right, they have done very well on their investments, so it is not to do with the investments, it's strictly just coming into that end game where they're trying to fully fund.
Just get the funded. Okay.
Medicare town share line has gone up.
Is that driven, is that the Medicare, our Medicare employer tax? So it's just because our payroll's gone up?
Yes.
Correct.
All right, totally formulaic. Okay.
All right, and then the OPEB trust, I put up $1,000 because our goal is to put it up 5,000 every year. We haven't been able to do that, but I put in a $1,000 increase because that does help our actuarial report at the when we have it done. We currently have a $17 million liability on that, but we are enjoying a better discount rate because we have been increasing it every year, the amount we put in.
So can you, for the members, can you describe what the OPEB trust is, Sandy?
So the OPEB trust is other post-employment benefits. We have it, it's an irrevocable trust fund. It can only be used for retiree post-employment benefits, which are mainly health insurance.
Medical,
and dental.
retiree medical.
Medical, health, life, and dental. And that's, so the state has required us to put this on our financial statements. And then they said, you really should fund it because you're, you know, when they compare us to other towns, when we go out for bonding to get a good rate, they're going to be looking at what our liability is. We already are, we have an advantage because we only pay 50% of the health insurance, which is not an advantage to our employees, but it's an advantage to our liability. The only other thing we can do is build up this trust fund to help us with that. So that's what we are
Okay.
on that.
Thank you.
Now, I did want to bring to your attention the gas and oil and heating oil lines. Last year, I level funded them at 90,000. But you can see in FY21, we only expended 63,000 on the gas and oil. And so I put in the 90,000 again. I really couldn't put it up, but this year I know it's going to have to go up. I know the 90,000 is going to hold. And for the heating oil, I'm not sure about that 50,000 either. So that's something that we need to think about, and we could talk to Steve about. Steve does the gas and oil, and Scott Materna does the heating oil. So those are two lines, though, that we really have to look at.
Well, you've taken them up over actual usage. You've taken them up each about 50%. Well, 150, one a little less than that. Right.
Well, I haven't taken them up at all. I think that gas
well,
and oil,
against voted, but against our actual utilization, you've taken them up considerably.
right. So, but
Right.
that was FY21. FY22, we're going to be lucky to get in at 90,000.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right. So
Yeah.
FY23, I think we have to increase it, and I would say at least to 110,000.
Sure.
That's where we had been years ago at 110,000. But that is my suggestion on that, and the heating oil probably to 70. But I'm not positive. I keep holding off, waiting to see as the bills come through, you know, where we're standing. But we're going to have to look at those.
Yeah. No question.
Okay. And I think that's the end of the sheet.
Okay.
So that's where we're standing.
All right. So we're looking right now at a 4% increase. The vast majority of it, I mean, there are really two items here. It's the school budget and well, police and fire, a question about the lieutenant, the school budget, and
Oh.
the rest is wage and
Right.
wage and contracts mainly.
Right. And that is, I did not take out the amount for the lieutenant from the police budget.
Right,
So
and I
that,
think,
that amount of money, that's 92.7, I think, was in for that lieutenant position.
okay. Scroll
I
down
have
so we
to-
see the bottom line again.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so we're up $1 million. That'll bring it under $1 million, the increase. But we've still got some work to do on the school budget.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did speak with Christine, the business manager at the schools, and asked her if there was going to be any movement on the Silver Lake assessment. She said they were going to the next meeting with some possible savings, so I'm not sure. I'm hoping.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So Sandy, what's your advice? I mean, we've got to get these votes in. And I think we've got a couple of more department heads to come and talk to us. But then we should probably, 2 weeks out? I mean, because I know we're getting down to the wire here. I want to be able to deliver on what we owe the town in time for the printing and all of that.
Right.
Do we need final votes 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out? Kind of where are we?
March 28th, you have to have the final
We have to be-
votes in.
We have to be
Right.
done March 28th.
With the possible exception of the school, you might have a little wiggle room to, at the very last second, change
Okay.
something on April 4th, but that's when you're meeting with the school. So I would kind of reserve that and have everything done before,
Okay.
like by the end of the 28th.
We're hoping
So-
to put this to print on April 7th.
Okay, so committee, we have to come prepared next week. We'll probably go through the same exercise that we just did and vote anything that we can next week, or vote recommend or not recommend, or that we'll withhold recommendation. But we have to take a position on all of these, as many as possible next week. And then the following week, the 28th, will be our final look. And then we have to put it to bed.
Mhm.
All right, so think about, kind of think about your questions next week and things that we may want to ask, but I mean, we're getting there, but we've got to put this to rest in 2 weeks' time.
Right. And don't be afraid to reach out to any of your liaisons if it's one of your liaisons who you're looking at. Or reach out to me and I can resend you the budget information from a specific department or any further information that I've got.
Okay, Sandy, I think you can stop sharing at this point, unless there's anything on capital plan that we should discuss.
Well,
Are we
there
good?
is. So, I don't know how much time everyone has, but we have the articles to be voted. And,
Why don't I
There-
propose so
some
that we
will
can be,
easy, but
why don't I propose so that we can be duly deliberate on this, that this be first agenda item next week and that we walk through each of these the way we just did. But that we be thoughtful about it. We hear about each of these and then do we vote? I can't
Well,
remember. Do we?
you did, they actually, the one meeting you missed, Tom, they did walk through each of these
Oh,
individually.
okay,
So yes, then at this point you would the committee needs to take a vote to either recommend it as it is, to not recommend it as it is. And you could, if that was the committee's choice, you could say, we want to recommend it at a lower rate or whatever the case is. But generally speaking, either you definitely need to vote to either recommend it or not recommend it. And Sandy, I know, did say, I believe in the previous discussion when she walked through them all, that currently, if I'm correct, Sandy, you do have the money to fund all of the ones that capital plan recommended.
yes.
Yep. Okay.
Things
so
have
is
been
it a
changing
single
little
vote
bit.
for the plan or is it a line item vote, Sandy?
No, it's a line item vote. You'll be
Okay.
voting on each article, recommend or not to recommend.
Right.
And I think, yeah. I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure we have enough free cash to cover everything at this point because I've had some things change.
Mhm.
But we have a couple of articles which are still a little fluid, so.
Why don't then we give it till next week and then we, but everyone come prepared to vote these articles next week.
Next week, I should be able to share actually like a copy of the warrant. We're supposed to be sitting down and discussing the layout of the warrant, and
Okay.
I should have information for you. All right.
That'd be
Some of
great.
them will be no-brainers and some of them will be more that we have to think.
Yes.
Sandy, just point of clarification for the committee. I know we held off last time on the wage lines. We just, they didn't do any recommendations on that because you were going to be adjusting for the 1% that we expect to do in the special town meeting. Have you adjusted those in their budget sheet or you have not?
I have not. And that we need to talk about too. So there's the special town meeting, and the special town meeting, there is an article for a 1% wage increase for all wage and personnel employees. I believe that you were on board with that. You were on board with it last year. So
Different year.
What I was wondering is, would you like me to update all the wage lines, wage and personnel wage lines to include that 1% increase? Because
Well,
it's
I
your
think in
budget,
order,
you can do that.
in order for us to move forward, you need to do that, and then we
Right.
need to vote it.
Okay.
And then we see where the committee stands
All right.
to vote on those. I
And I
don't.
will, sorry, Tom, I was just going to say, I will go back and check too, because I think you actually did take a vote a few meetings ago and actually recommend the 1%.
The 1%.
Yes,
Right.
Yeah.
because
And that's
because
the
all the unions had already,
FY22.
Yeah,
because all
we
the
did that
unions
at
had already
joint-
had it.
I
Yeah.
thought we did that at joint meeting with BOS.
Right.
Yes, yep,
Yeah.
I believe you did.
Right. So we voted in favor of that. We should see the budget with that in it, since we had
All right.
voted that, and that really came off really hard negotiations that Gordon had done around this and around other, the other contracts that he's needed
Right.
to do, and what he's doing with the teachers.
Mhm.
So I think we should see it with that in it, and
Okay.
and then be in a permission. But would we then be in a position to vote everything, because all the wages lines would be, we basically have wages and contractuals that would be the only thing. So we've got just
Right.
steps, the 1%, and things like license increases and things like that on the contractual side.
Mhm. We could vote everything but that would be saying that you are not offering the employees anything for FY23. And
Don't think we can.
Wait, how do we say, I don't understand how we get there. And Cheryl, I hear you. I want to promise I'm not ignoring you, but if we want mass exodus from this town, then let's keep not paying our people.
I understand that, but they need to understand some people could lose their jobs next year. You do that.
Or we raise taxes.
Once again, which is hard. You've got a lot of senior citizens here, and
I
frankly,
get it.
You know?
But this is where we have to come up with other revenue, because we shouldn't put that burden on the seniors.
no,
But we still have to have a community that can serve itself. A zero wages next year, when we are probably looking at 40-year highs in inflation, wouldn't be sustainable. And I think a 1% is almost I don't know, tributary. It's kind of just a wink. It's a nod to their dedication. It's not really economic. We're talking about 1% here. But could you help me understand why that would mean zero for 2023, Sandy?
because the 1% that you guys voted that I'm going to be adjusting all the payrolls for was for FY22.
Okay.
So that's
But that
just me.
doesn't speak to FY23,
It doesn't speak to
which is what,
FY23.
yeah. And this is where, isn't Gordon negotiating 2023 now?
Gordon's been negotiating contracts. All the selectmen have been negotiating with the unions. I'm not
Mhm.
sure where they are with any of those. So that would be something that we could ask. I don't know whether they'd want to go into executive session and discuss it with you.
And how
But
Okay.
I just wanted to bring it up.
Okay. Yes, Cheryl.
How many unions do we have? We have the fire,
You have fire,
firefighters, and the police.
fire, police, highway. There's a new mixed unit one that involves some of the water people and 2 administrative assistants.
Mhm.
And then the schools.
And the
And
school.
then the school.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the majority, I would say, are in unions, and then you have your wage and personnel employees are probably, there are less people there.
Right. So we should quantify this too,
Well-
so we understand. Sandy, if you could come back next week, what does 1% imply for the wage and personnel staff? Because that's really what
Okay.
we're talking about. And I think we'll be surprised at how small a number that actually is, given all of the
Right.
other problems that we've got going on.
Okay. I'll
Okay.
bring that back for the next meeting.
Okay.
Can I
Sorry,
ask
Tom,
a
just-
question?
Sorry.
Can
Yes,
I ask
Jean.
a question? It's Jean.
Sure,
So
Jean.
if that amount gets voted on a special town meeting, that 1% for FY '22, when would the employees see that?
Okay, so if it gets voted at the special town meeting, that's the beginning of May. So probably would take me at least another 2 weeks to get all the figures in for retro.
And
Would
then it'd
be
be
when the
retro.
retro-
Probably beginning to mid-June.
So
I
would
would
be
say
a whole
definitely before the end of the
retro
fiscal
amount.
year.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
But it'd be a lump sum, right?
right.
It would be, yeah, okay, great, thank you.
And sorry, Tom, I just wanted to clarify. I know you asked Sandy about the 1%, and then I believe you said for the wage and personnel employees, but did you actually want a figure from her on the 1% just for wage and personnel employees in fiscal year 23, or also in case the unions did it 1% on them?
Well, I mean, it'd be great information to have, but it's not a number that we have any
Control over.
authority over, right? Or
Yeah,
even
sure.
recommending
Mhm.
power over. So it'd be an interesting
Right.
number to have by comparison. But I think what we would see is point counterpoint, how much we're spending on the contractual side versus the non-contractual, the people who are subject to the wage and personnel committee,
Mhm.
which I think will be very small by comparison.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions on the budget for this week? We should come back next week prepared to vote as many as we can and to vote the capital plan. Okay, we're at public participation. Is there anybody? Okay, any other business from the members?
Tom,
Yeah. Yes, Steve.
I apologize. I don't want to muddle the waters even further, but I know that, you guys have a big mountain to climb. But has the committee done any work at all on what we, at the beginning of this beginning of the year, in doing the regrading of the wage and personnel positions? Because that's going to be also would affect that 1%. If I don't know how far you've gotten into it, if you're going to push it back to after town meeting, or what the committee's pleasure is.
I honestly think we're going to have to push it back till after the town meeting. We've got the competitive data, but the reality of the contracts and the and all that, and the kind of fiscal position we're in, Chief, has sort of had us set it to the side. But I would ask, since that's a joint committee, why don't I have a word with Gordon and see where he wants to go with that, and then see if we can shape it all up and get it ready. But I don't think we're going to have it ready for this ATM.
Yeah, totally fine. I was just wondering, because I know it's always on the agenda. It's been there for almost 8 months.
It has, I know, and we have,
So
and
I was
we've,
just
we
wondering.
have,
No
we've gotten
problem.
a lot of data and no capacity to make a decision on it.
I understand totally. Thank you, Tom.
Sure. Anything else? Okay. Motion to adjourn
So moved.
So moved. Second.
in a second. Okay, roll call vote. Michael,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and myself, Tom Connolly, we vote to adjourn at 7:16 on 14th of March. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for everyone's input this evening, especially our
you.
guests.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good
good
night.
night.
Thank you
Good
for your
night.
help. Thank you.